Hello everyone, it's Danny, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite standalones. So a standalone is a novel that is not part of a series, so you can just read it and then be done. I personally read a lot of series, so I haven't read a lot of standalones, but over the past year and a half, I've read a lot of standalones that I have really liked, so that is something I'm getting more into. And for this video, I tried not to repeat any of my answers from my last video, just because I did talk about a few standalones in there that I really like. But I will not be including some of those, just so I don't sound like a broken record. But anyway, let's just get into the video. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. So this is actually a book I read for school. It's about this boy named Christopher who is autistic, and he is investigating this murder of his neighbor's dog, that his dog was killed, and he's trying to figure out how the dog got killed. So it's kind of a weird book, but ends up turning into a lot more is happening besides the dog getting killed, and he's just trying to navigate his world. And as a person who is autistic myself, I related a lot to the main character, and I think this is honestly a pretty good representation of autism, though I know a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people in the autism community don't think it's very good, or they think it's bad representation, or just because the author is not autistic, they don't think you should read it, but I think it's pretty good. Obviously, I don't speak for every autistic person, but I think it's pretty good. Then if you want to read it, just make sure you're talking to someone who does have autism in your life about it, so you can get your questions answered. The next book that I will be talking about is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So I love this book a lot. I think I read it in 2019. I think it was 2019. But this is kind of like a futuristic dystopian type novel that is set in this world where there's this thing called Deathcast, where basically you get a call the day before you're supposed to die, and then they tell you that you're gonna die and you have a day left to, you have how many hours left to live. 2 points of views. Matteo and Rufus. And I don't know if I said those names right, because I haven't read this book in a long time. So, but basically it follows them separately, and then they meet up, and then they spend their last day together. It's a really good book. It's obviously sad, as the title implies. But yeah, I really love this book. I really liked these characters as well. Matteo has anxiety, and I thought it was a really good portrayal of anxiety, and I really enjoyed it. And the next book that I will suggest is Hunted by Megan Spooner. Megan Spooner is an author that I really like. She also wrote the Starbound trilogy, which is one of my favorite series. She was the co-author of that with Amy Kaufman. So this is my first her first solo book that I read. And this is actually a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it follows this girl named Eva, who her father goes missing, and right before he goes missing, he was trying to hunt this beast. So yeah, it's pretty similar to Beauty and the Beast, but it's kind of a more modern version of it. I cannot tell you what the plot is besides that, just because it's been quite a while since I read it. But I think, yeah, I read it last year, and I think it was one of my favorites of last year, or the year before that, I'm not sure. But yeah, I really like this book. It's a really fast book, and the writing's really good, and Eve is a really interesting character. And the next book is probably maybe my favorite out of this, one of my favorites out of this whole stack. And that is It Came From the Sky by Chelsea Sadati. So this is a standalone, obviously, and it follows a boy named Gideon who is one night doing a science experiment, and he accidentally blows a hole in the ground, and the cops come, and his brother, Gideon's like, they're twins, or is like his older brother or something. But his brother basically tells the cop that it was like an alien, and they saw like something fall from the sky, and that was an alien. So basically decided to go along with this and try to like pull off this alien hoax. So yeah, and it's a really cool book. It also has like a bunch of mixed media. It has like interviews, and like photos. Let me find a good picture. And basically the whole premise of it is Gideon is writing it as like a research paper, so he thinks that it'd be cool if he like got into school with like a research paper about this alien hoax. So yeah, that's kind of like what it looks like. It has a bunch of different mixed media and such. It's a really cool book. Main character is also gay, and there's a male romance who, it's really not that big of a plot point, but it is in there. So I really like that as well. And one other thing that I forgot to say, They Both Die at the end is a queer book. One of the characters is bi and one of the characters is gay. So that's what I forgot to say about that, but I just want to throw that in there. And the next book I have is The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. So this is probably the most sci-fi-ish thing that I have on this list. It is, one second. It is set in this like kind of dystopian future where these aliens have taken over Earth, and all the people are kind of like being kept in these like houses, and they monitor what they do, and they can't like do any type of art. They can't read, they can't listen to music, and all that's all that's banned, and you'll like get executed if you do get found like listening to music or like reading a book or something. And the main character, Ellie, is a person that basically runs a secret library. So she lends out these books to people despite it being illegal. And then the other point of view is this person named Morris, who is one of the aliens. And he secretly really likes music, and like that's uncalled for these aliens, because they're supposed to be these like unhuman people that don't like anything, and they ban music from people, so they shouldn't listen to it, but he really likes music, so he kind of teams up with Ellie to get some music for himself, and then they turn into this adventure to try to kind of save the world from these aliens. It's like a really fun book. I read it earlier this year. I think I read it in like February. It's definitely one of my favorites this year so far. It's also a pretty diverse book. Main characters, Ellie is half black, half white, and she's also plus sized, and it has like positive plus size representation. And she also has anxiety that I found to be really well represented. And she also has hypothyroidism, so that's cool. And then she's also like biromantic asexual. She's demi-asexual in specific. So there is a lot of queer characters in there. There is like a character that's like they them pronouns, and there's a few other characters in there. So yeah, it's pretty diverse, and I really liked it for those reasons. Next, we have another book that I read this year, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is actually an adult novel. This is the one not like YA, the book that I include on this list, and it is about this woman named Nora who who attempts to end her own life, and she ends up in this kind of like in between life and death place called the Midnight Library, where you basically can relive every mistake that you've ever had, and then like decide if you want to go to a different alternate reality of what mistake that you made, or if you want to end up dead. So it's a very dark book, obviously. Obviously trigger warnings for like suicide and self-harm and like alcoholism is in there a bit. She has definitely a dark book, but it's also kind of magical, and it's just really cool idea and this really cool setting. So I really like this book. I think I gave it like a 3.5, so it was a little bit slow, so it wasn't quite good enough to be 4 stars, but I still really highly recommend it if it's something that you think you're up to. And yeah, I think it was a really good representation of mental illness. Me myself, who has depression, I think it was a very good representation of depression and suicidal thoughts. So yeah, I really like this book, and it's also like very short. It's like 300 pages barely. And I'm also reading another book by this author, Matt Haig. I'm reading The Comfort Book, which I think it was his most recent release. I think it came out pretty recently, but my mom bought it, so I have been reading it. And it's kind of like a nonfiction type book that has a bunch of short stories about like the author's personal experience with depression and that kind of stuff. I am enjoying it, so hopefully I will talk about my feelings about that more in depth soon. And the last book won't be a surprise for anyone, and that is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is definitely my favorite book on this list. I read about this book constantly, and it has tabs in it because I reread it. I read it twice last year. So this is a novel set in verse, or written in verse, which is basically a type of poetry. And it follows this boy named Michael, who follows him from when he's a kid, and like him growing up and learning to accept himself and his sexuality. And then it follows him as he goes to college, and as he makes new friends, and as he kind of gets into drag. And then Michael's also mixed race, so it's very interesting to see like how that impacts the story and how that plays into his story. So I really like this book. There's a lot of lessons that you can learn for it, especially like from me as a white person. So definitely like and it's a very fast read. I think I read it in one sitting because it's verse. The audiobook I think is read by the author, and it's only like 3 hours long, so you can read it in one sitting. And I would recommend you check it out, and I'd recommend you check out all of these books, obviously, but that is the last recommendation in this video, and I hope you like this video, and I will be back next week, hopefully, with another video. And if you have any suggestions of like what you'd like to see from me, please leave them below, because I'm not really sure what I want to film next. Bye. Also, like and subscribe.